If you're a single woman over 40 looking for Mr. Right and you want practical dating strategies that help you stop wasting precious time chasing after unavailable guys, you're in the right place. In this episode, as an intuitive dating coach, I'm sharing the essential first date don'ts so you can get closer to meeting Mr. Right. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to part two of my first date do's and don'ts. Last time we looked at the do's, so make sure you go back and listen to the other episode after this one. And today we're focusing on don'ts. And the reason this is important, I want you to think about the subtext here. Your number one secret superpower is awareness. Awareness of self, awareness of your feelings, your patterns, what you're doing, what you want. So if you don't know what you're doing, that is an unhealthy pattern, you will keep spinning your wheels. And that's how you get into the kind of pattern I was in, where I kept choosing the same unavailable guys over and over again and being in unhappy and unfulfilling relationships, and really just accepting the crumbs of love rather than being in a mutual give and take relationship. And it wasn't until I figured out what are my patterns and becoming more self-aware, more self-accepting, and more connected to my true self. Those are really the pillars of my framework as an intuitive dating coach. And I use these framework pieces on myself. I didn't just start talking about it from a book or saying, this is what you should do. I actually went through this process. And so this week I'm leaning into the don'ts as a framework for you to look at your dates, your first date, before, during, or after a first date with a potential love match, to make sure you know what you're doing to either get closer to finding Mr. Right or moving in the opposite direction. So I did personally overcome this chasing after love, and I did meet the love of my life, and I'm married to him now. And I had to, it took me till my mid 40s to do it, but I did it, and you can do it too. And so here are some of the important patterns that I want you to watch out for as the don'ts of a first date, to look at, so you can stop getting in your own way while you're looking for lasting love and getting really frustrated and basically wanting to give up. I don't want you to get to that point. So this is my list of the common pitfalls that women over 40 experience when dating and what to watch out for. So you can kind of just tune in and see, check in with yourself, or do some journaling around this after the episode. Am I doing any of these things that need to be listed as a don't do these things anymore? And of course, as I said, I balanced it out by saying what you can do, and that was in the previous episode. The first one I have here is extremely important. We're going to start with the most important one, and it is don't ignore your intuition. Now, I know if you're probably listening to this, you're a very intuitive person. You really are able to pick up on a lot of things and very aware, but maybe you don't listen to it. You might have what I had, where it was like I was getting extremely clear signals from my intuition. I knew all about it, but I was ignoring it, and I wasn't trusting my intuition, and I wasn't listening to my intuition. And so when you're preparing, before your date, during your date, and after your first date with a potential love match. So this is high stakes. If you're looking for lasting love, you want to be able to see, is this person going to be someone that is worth my time, that is going to match up with what I want and who I'm looking for? Or is it going to be someone I'm going to get involved in and get tangled up in who happens to be unavailable in some way? So what does it look like to ignore your intuition? This looks like talking yourself out of something. So saying, oh no, I don't want to go on this date, and it's never going to amount to anything because I don't think we'll have anything to talk about, or I'm not really sure about this part of his profile. And I'm talking about this in the sense that maybe mostly like 90% of this sounds great. You know, you've talked to him a couple of times on an online chat or whatever it is, or you've got a sense of who he is and you're kind of excited about it. And you've looked at his profile and you're like, this seems pretty great. But then you find yourself saying, no, I don't think I really want to go on this date. I don't want to talk to him because of some minuscule XYZ thing. So that's talking yourself out of it, even though your intuition in your heart, in your body are feeling a little bit excited, like, oh, this seems like it's going to be great. So if you find yourself doing the opposite of that, you are ignoring your intuition. It can also look like talking yourself into something. So this is again going against your intuition, because if your intuition says, no, I don't think you should go on this date, this doesn't feel right, something's off. But then you say, oh no, but I should give him a chance. He's in the right neighborhood. He seems to check off all the boxes. But you're feeling the sense of, this is going to be not a right match for me. He doesn't seem to be the right match for me. But on paper, or on the app, maybe everything seems to be great, but your intuition is going off and sounding the alarm bells, but you're like, well, no, I have to give this a chance. And so those are two sides of the same coin, that we can talk ourselves into something and talk ourselves out of something. And this is still under ignoring your intuition, what I don't want you to do. Another way that it can show up is making excuses. So, but I'm just really busy for the next 2 weeks and I don't think I have time to see this guy. I'll just wait. So maybe you say, I'll message him in 2 weeks. Well, it's going to be too late in 2 weeks, because the online dating space, it just happens really quickly. So he'll most likely have moved on in 2 weeks. And you kind of know that deep down. So you're ignoring taking that opportunity that your intuition is telling you, hey, you should try this out. You should go and see this guy, go on a date. So you're making excuses as to why you shouldn't or why you should. Dismissing or downplaying something is another way that this shows up. So that could look like, well, he's just divorced like a couple months, but hey, that should be fine. There's no big deal around that. And if you know my personal story, that I got involved with my first boyfriend, 25 years later, and I was downplaying everything around the fact that he was going through an extremely messy divorce. I was in a really unstable place in my life, but I was dismissing it and downplaying all of that to push through and ignore my intuition. And it could also look like defending the other person. So that's kind of what I was talking about. And it could be specifically like, oh, well, he said he's going through a really hard time right now, but maybe he would be friendlier in another case if he wasn't going through this big, huge emotional upheaval. So you're defending someone that you don't even really know, and that's a total waste of energy, and it is ignoring, again, the alarm bells that your intuition is trying to say, hey, this is too much. And another way to look at it is trying to force something to be what it's not. So, oh, this, the same kind of thing, like, this is perfect on paper, or in the profile, he seems perfect, but I have this nagging sensation, just the way he talked to me and the way he, answered certain questions didn't feel right, but this is going to be perfect. This is, I got to just move forward and try this out because everything is perfect on his profile. So these are all ways that we can ignore our intuition, and it's something we don't want to be doing. And I'll leave you with this part. It is very important mantra that you can remember is, you can't love an unavailable guy enough to make him into Mr. Right. So I'll say that again. You can't love an unavailable guy enough to make him into Mr. Right. In other words, you cannot change who someone is and what something is. If it's not there, it's not there. And so that's what I want you to really shy away from and don't do that. And the biggest way that we can figure this out is just don't ignore your intuition. Second part is don't emotionally check out. And I want you to instead take a break until you're able to connect to yourself again. And you can go back and listen to the previous episode on the do's and how to do that. So this looks like numbing out, not being aware of your feelings or pushing down your feelings, especially the hard feelings like anger, sadness, judgment, loneliness, fear. If you're not able to actually be with yourself and be emotionally connected and aware before, during, and after a first date, you're going to get a very skewed idea of what's good and what's not for you, and you'll be further away or more confused, or it'll seem a lot more foggy. Like, is this good for me? Is this not good for me? Should I go on another date? And you'll be completely confused if you are emotionally checked out. So that's a big don't, is don't emotionally check out. Find whatever way you can to take care of yourself and be available to your own feelings, your own heart, and your own emotions through the whole process of dating, and especially on a first date. And so, some more specific things around this is don't sign into an online dating app or go on a date when you're upset, tired, feel pressured, or triggered. For example, right after spending time with couples and feeling really lonely. Like, I went on a day trip with, it was two other couples and me. So I was like the fifth wheel, and it was extremely difficult. Even though I was like, well, I should be really happy for these people. They're friends of mine, and they were all lovey-dovey. They were holding hands. They had their arms around each other. They were nuzzling each other's noses, and you could just feel the cringe knowing what that's like when you are alone, when you're wanting someone and you really want to be in a relationship. It just feels so upsetting. And then you're fighting with yourself because you're saying, oh, I shouldn't feel this way. I'm a terrible friend for feeling jealous or feeling super lonely or unlovable or just really upset about the whole situation. And so, obviously, if you're going to go out and have an experience like that and feeling really lonely and unlovable and upset about it, this is not the time to go onto an online dating app. And I know we might have that instinct like, I've got to find someone, I've got to get myself out of this situation. Look at these people, my friends, they're so happy, and I really want to be happy right now. I can't wait. I can't stand another month of being like this. And so, of course, that's going in the opposite direction, because if we're not taking care of ourselves, again, if we're not allowing and nurturing our feelings and accepting how we feel and being aware of how we feel, we're going to choose people who are going to be part of that trigger. And just out of desperation and loneliness and all of these really hard feelings, if we're not able to deal with those in a way of, feeling them and acknowledging them and all of that. Of course, when you sign into an online dating app or you go on a date, it's really not going to go well. And it might even be someone who is a potential match for you, but it's not going to go well because you're just going to feel so triggered and so raw and emotional, and you might make a mountain out of a molehill on something that he says or doesn't say, and it's just going to be really difficult to figure out if they're a match or not. So definitely don't do any of that dating apps or go on a date when you're feeling upset, tired, and triggered. Okay, this one is also very important. I want you to really listen up for this one. Don't focus on the other person too much. I want you to focus on how you feel in the other person's presence. And I say this a lot because it is extremely important, especially with someone who is empathetic like you and who is able to really pick up on other people's emotions and tune into the whole vibe of everything going on. And if you do that too much, you're going to be disconnected with how you feel around that person. and you're going to miss the signals that your body's trying to tell you, or the subtle whispers of your heart, or the alarm bells, or, the good bells of your intuition. You're going to miss all of that because you're going to be so hyper laser focused on the person. Like, what does that facial expression mean? What did he mean by saying that? I notice he gets uncomfortable when I talk about this or that. And, even seeing how he's sitting in the chair and just studying the person to the point of being hyper focused on them automatically means that you are literally outside of your body. You are trying so hard to get into their shoes in an empathetic way, or put yourself in their shoes, that you are literally outside of your body. Your energy is not connected. You're not tuned into the most important aspects with how you are feeling as you interact with this person, how you're experiencing them. Do you feel safe around them? Do you feel seen and heard? Do you feel like, oh, this person is someone who's really interested in me? You're going to miss all of that, and yet you're going to be an expert on that person. So which one would you rather be? An expert on somebody else, or an expert on yourself and what you truly need and desire? I hope you will say the second one. You want to be really in your body, in yourself, in your truly connected to who you are as you're dating, and especially on these first dates and before, during, and after. During that whole process, you want to be really tuned into yourself. Now, this is not to say you're not going to obviously pay attention to how the person's acting and what they're saying, but that's not the most important thing. You will pick up on every single thing you need to know. And this is where it goes back to trusting your intuition, trusting your heart, trusting that you can handle things, that you will be guided, that you can guide yourself towards what you truly want by being within yourself and more connected to who you are. That is the way you're going to do it. You're not going to miss anything. If you miss some subtle signal or something that he's saying or not saying, you're going to pick up on it from within yourself, being in your body and looking out from where you are towards that person. So just feel the subtle shift in what I'm saying, and hopefully you can kind of feel the huge difference of how you would actually navigate a date being fully in your body and connected and emotionally tuned into yourself. Just imagine how different that will be. And the last thing I want to touch on is, don't make decisions until you've had time and space away from your date to ensure that you can tune into your heart and intuition. In other words, don't jump on something because you want to immediately have the fairy tale win. So going back to what I was saying with the story of being with two couples who were like madly in love, um, and then running back home and being like, oh my God, I have to find someone. I can't stand being the fifth wheel anymore. And I don't want to be this lonely. And so you automatically will make these knee-jerk reactions when it comes to romance, and finding yourself in a world of pain because of it. And it's like weeks or months of wasted time on somebody that you're like, I really, really want to make this work. Like, this is going to work. And feeling that sense of pushing, of forcing, of controlling, of being like, this is going to work no matter what. I'm going to make this work. And being determined in that sense, but you're really just shooting yourself in the foot because you're not allowing your intuition to speak to you and your heart to really open up and blossom and tune into how you're feeling as you go on dates with this person, as another way to look at it. So what this looks like is, you go on a first date and everything's going pretty well, but you have a little bit of restraint. You're going to give yourself that space, knowing that everything is going to work out perfectly in its own time. You're guiding yourself and you're going to listen to yourself, but that doesn't mean you have to immediately at the end of the date, if I've had someone say when I was dating, like, oh, let's go on a weekend away. I have a perfect opportunity. We should do this. We should do that. And I was like, yeah, 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 yeah. But it just led me into all of these things where I wanted to back out, or I realized very shortly after the conversation that I didn't really feel good around the person. I didn't really want to date him anymore. But then I felt like I was tied into all of these things and I'd made all these decisions that I had to go and undo. And it was extremely uncomfortable for me. So don't make decisions until you've had that time and space. You can say, I've had such an amazing time with you, and I really look forward to staying in touch, or I will, how about we talk to each other next week and see how we feel about this whole thing? And just something where you're saying, yes, I'm interested, or, if you're not interested, you can just say, well, I think I need to just go home and rest and give myself the weekend and reconnect with you next week. And then you can decide later, okay, am I gonna tell the guy I don't really want to date anymore? I don't think there's a spark, or I might say, well, maybe I could go on another coffee date. But give yourself that time to make that decision. Don't feel like in the moment you've got to do that. And anyone who's actually going to force you, just like some people have really high standards on that, and they say, well, let's go on another date. And you say, that sounds really great, but I'd love to take the weekend to think about it. And that's perfectly okay. If the person gets really like fine and defensive and wants to just kind of drop you right there, you have your answer for, how someone will respond when you say you need time and space for something, for a decision making, or to take the feminine route of tuning into yourself. If they're not going to allow you to do that, you already have an answer of how the relationship is going to go. So hopefully that makes sense and these steps have been helpful. You can kind of make your own don'ts list and say, okay, this is really important to me. I feel like I really do this a lot and I feel like it's not a healthy pattern for me, and kind of go through the list of what I put forward, and you can mark off what's most important to you on this don'ts list, and be sure to go back and listen to the previous episode 10 for the do's, and you want to balance it out with your do's and don'ts and just make a really good list for yourself that resonates for you of what you really want to do and what you feel like you should stop doing. Okay, and next week is the season 2 finale. Can you believe it? I can't believe it. We've been on such an amazing adventure during season 2. We've really dived into a lot of the practical things that we can do, and it's a holistic approach. So next week is a special episode of Q&A from you, the listener. I'll be answering questions. And if you want to be part of the conversation with any of your burning questions, then be sure to sign up for my mailing list on my website. You can go to stopchasingunavailableguys.com and scroll to the bottom of the page, or just find anywhere where you can sign up for my newsletter. And then you'll receive an email about the questions and how to ask a question that I will be answering on our season finale next week. And the bonus, you can do my free challenge to get clear on what you want and how to recognize unavailable guys before you get involved. And that's called my Detox Unavailable Guys Challenge. So be sure to check all of that out. And I will be seeing you next week for our finale and answering all your most important questions on dating after 40 and finding Mr. Right and finding that beautiful, lasting love. And remember, love is closer than you think.